Okay, let's unpack this. If you happen to be listening right on June 13th, 2025, our sources for today suggest there's, well, a very specific kind of energy in the air.
Hmm.
It feels less like just another day and maybe more like you're standing at a real pivot point, like a moment where you're being nudged towards a pretty significant choice.
That's absolutely the thread, yeah. It runs through everything we're looking at today. We've got insights from astrology, a daily tarot reading, and even this fascinating ancient tale.
And they all seem to point to the same thing.
They really do. They converge on this one core idea,
Mm-hmm.
navigating a crucial crossroads, a point where the logic of your mind feels like it's really wrestling with maybe the deeper pull of your soul.
And the astrology gives us a really potent image for this, doesn't it? The source highlights the sun square, the nodes aspect specifically for today,
Right.
calls it an intense karmic crossroads. It sounds like a direct confrontation between who you consciously think you are, that's your sun, and this deeper evolutionary path your soul is on. That's the nodes, right?
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. It's a moment just pregnant with potential for maybe course correction. It often stirs up echoes in the past or maybe brings identity struggles right to the surface.
So our mission then in this deep dive is to really dig into what standing at that kind of pivot point actually feels like.
Yeah, what are the challenges it throws up? And importantly, how do these different sources, ancient and modern, suggest you can navigate it? Hopefully with a bit of grace
Right.
and trust.
Okay, so let's start there with this feeling the sources talk about. They call it an atypical situation, which suggests the energy might feel unfamiliar, maybe a bit disorienting, but not necessarily bad.
Right, not bad, just different. And what's fascinating is the immediate guidance isn't about figuring it all out, getting control with your mind.
Huh.
No, it's almost the opposite. It's about surrendering worries, trusting the unfolding. The sources pinpoint the core conflict straight away. The mind's habit of rationalizing, judging, maybe trying to control everything,
Mm-hmm.
that's seen as the main obstacle.
The obstacle to what? Following the soul's direction.
Exactly. To following where your soul is trying to lead you.
So, okay, if the mind wants to grasp and control, what does the soul actually ask for, according to this material?
Well, the messages from the soul, as these sources interpret them, are quite clear. It's about prioritizing things like forgiveness, compassion, and gratitude.
Hmm.
The invitation is really to let grace, not logic or anxiety, be the guiding force behind your thoughts, your words, even your actions, especially in this kind of moment.
But that feels really counterintuitive, doesn't it? I mean, if you're facing something atypical, your mind's immediate reaction is usually to analyze, right? To plan, maybe even worry a little.
Of course, that's the default setting for many of us.
So how do the sources suggest bridging that gap between that rationalizing mind and this call for, grace and trust?
Ah, well, that's where they introduce a really interesting nuance. They do talk about discipline
Mm-hmm.
and responsibility, perseverance. These aren't thrown out. But there's a crucial twist. This effort, this discipline, it should be directed specifically towards tasks and goals that align with your highest values,
Right.
your purpose, essentially the direction your soul is actually calling you towards.
Ah, I see.
So it's not just about working hard for the sake of it. It's about working hard on the right things, the things that really resonate with that deeper knowing inside you.
Okay, right. That makes sense. So it's aligning your outward actions with that inner pull rather than just striving for, I don't know, external validation or a feeling of control.
Exactly.
What does the tarot add to this picture then? Especially thinking about that sun square, the nodes energy.
The daily TarotScope reinforces this theme of alignment really powerfully.
Right.
It specifically points out that with this Sun Square Node's energy active, your words and thoughts, they carry extra weight.
Okay.
They need to align with where you are headed, your soul's evolutionary path, not dwelling on where you've been or getting stuck on past mistakes.
So if we're not meant to focus on the past, where should the focus be, according to the sources?
They're really clear on this.
Right.
The focus needs to be on non-judgment,
Mhm.
on compassion, forgiveness, both for yourself and for others.
Right.
They explicitly contrast this with the mind's tendency towards like fault-finding, shaming, or blaming, which just keeps you tethered to the past or stuck in that ego perspective.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and maybe challenging for that rational part of us.
Oh,
Instead of basing your sense of well-being on controlling external events or needing certainty about the future, which is totally what the mind craves, right?
absolutely.
The guidance seems to be to actively trust in positive outcomes. And maybe most importantly, to prioritize spiritual growth over seeking, say, material security or intellectual certainty.
Yes, and things like surrendering anxiety, finding freedom for the mind through practices like meditation or maybe just quiet self-reflection. These aren't just nice suggestions. They're presented as essential tools for navigating this kind of crossroads moment.
This really crystallizes that core choice the sources are presenting, doesn't it? Especially amplified today. It's like, do you default to the mind's strategy, which so often involves fear, judgment, needing to control things?
Or do you lean into the soul's direction, which calls for faith, forgiveness, trust?
Yeah.
It sounds simple when you say it like that, but it's deeply challenging in practice, of course.
And this is precisely where that ancient tale comes in, the one our sources include. It provides such a compelling illustration, I think.
It really does.
It tells a story of Mont Ra. He was a scribe, apparently renowned for his profound wisdom and his seemingly flawless logic. Someone who consciously prized reason above absolutely everything else, above feeling, above intuition.
He perfectly embodies that part of us, doesn't he? The
Mhm.
part that builds these walls of logic and order and rationalization around ourselves. He represents the mind's domain,
Yeah.
really. Yet the tale tells us, despite mastering reason, he felt this sort of inexplicable restlessness. He kept having recurring dreams, dreams of other lives, faces he felt he should remember, but his waking mind just couldn't grasp them.
Hmm.
And that detail, for me, that really hints at the soul memory, doesn't it? That evolutionary path we talked about with the notes. It's already stirring within him, even while his conscious identity, his son, is fiercely clinging to logic.
Then one day, the story goes, the goddess Mot herself appears to him.
The goddess of truth and balance.
Right. And she tells him he stands at the crossroads of his soul's journey, which is such a direct echo of that sun square the nodes description we started with.
Exactly.
She observes that his past, specifically all his accumulated judgments, clings to him like this heavy cloak. And while he wields reason like a sharp sword, she notes he denies the feather-light wisdom of compassion and faith.
Wow, what an image.
Yeah.
Striking. So she presents him with two paths. One is described as being walled by stone, rigidly paved with control, judgment, blame. The path the rationalizing mind naturally tends to build.
The safe path, maybe. Or what feels safe.
Maybe. And the other path, she says, is open. It's wild, uncharted. Its markers are things like forgiveness, trust, and connection to that deeper soul memory. It's just such a vivid, ancient metaphor for the very choice the astrology and the tarot are highlighting for today.
So, faced with this, Mart Ra asks the absolute fundamental question, doesn't he? How can he possibly know which path is the right one? Especially when his logical mind and the stirring spirit feel like they're completely at war.
And this is when Mott gives him this potent symbol,
Mm.
the scales of the forgotten past.
Right, the scales.
But they're not for measuring logic, interestingly. She offers them as an instrument of discernment, revealing alignment. In one pan, he has to place this heavy stone, etched with all his life's judgments, all that weight. And in the other pan, just a single, seemingly insignificant white feather, which is often associated with Ma'at herself, symbolizing truth, lightness, divine guidance.
And what happens?
The tale says the scales just tremble. They can't find balance. And the goddess tells him that true balance, the kind that indicates the soul's path, is only achieved when his words, thoughts, and deeds align not with the weight of where he has been, his judgments, but with the lightness of where his soul is seeking to go.
And the core of that alignment,
Yeah.
it comes back to what the other sources said too, right? Like, according to the goddess, it involves releasing blame, letting go of that illusion of absolute control.
Yeah, surrendering to this idea of an unseen hand maybe guiding things, even the vast movements of the stars, as the source mentioned. The tale says that in that moment, Ma'ra had this profound realization
What was it?
that his mind could construct endless justifications, endless strategies, but the heart's knowing, the soul's direction, that was silent. It was direct. And it felt light.
Light, like the feather.
Exactly. So he made the choice. He understood the weight on the scales wasn't the situation itself, but the weight of his own judgments, his own attempts at control.
So what did he do?
He cast the stone, the one representing all his rigid judgments, into the river. A really symbolic act of release. And he stepped onto that wild, uncharted path, the one marked by trust and forgiveness, leaving the familiar road of strategy and logic behind.
Wow.
And the tale concludes just beautifully. As he stepped onto that new path, a wind came and lifted the feather from the scales, symbolizing that his heart, now freed from the weight of judgment, was finally light.
So he transformed. He became not just a wise scribe focused on logic, but a sage of compassion.
Yeah.
The tale says he became someone who helped free other people into new possibilities, into new stories about themselves, rather than binding them to the heavy judgments of their pasts.
His heart was found light as the feather of Ma'at, and his deeper essence ascended. It really drives home that central message from all our sources today, doesn't it?
It really does.
That the soul's path isn't something the rational mind can easily measure or, grasp. It's something the heart is designed to follow, often through faith, trust, and that conscious release of judgment.
So connecting this amazing story back to the astrology that sun square the nodes and the guidance from the tarot,
Yeah.
the Ma'at tale gives us this rich narrative framework.
It makes it real. It shows how that tension between your conscious identity and your soul's path can actually play out inside you.
Yeah.
It makes tangible the choice between the mind's path control, judgment, versus the soul's path trust, forgiveness, and those scales of the forgotten path. They're just this perfect evocative symbol for discerning which direction truly leads to lightness, to alignment with where you're meant to go.
It really elevates this specific astrological moment, doesn't it? From just an abstract concept into something deeply human. An ancient challenge, even beautifully illustrated. It all circles back to that core guidance we found across all the sources. Choosing soul over the mind strategy. Choosing faith over fear. And consciously making sure your words, your thoughts, your actions, that they genuinely align with the direction your soul is being called.
It's about recognizing the weight you might be carrying around, that heavy stone of judgment and control, and then consciously deciding, maybe today especially, to set it down, allowing the lightness of your true path to lift you forward.
So as you reflect on this deep dive today, what does this all mean for you, listening? If the soul's path isn't really for the mind to measure, as that ancient tale suggests, how do you even begin to discern that quiet knowing of the heart, especially amidst all the noise, the worries, the logical strategies of everyday life?
That's the question.
Maybe consider, in your own experience today, what feels as light as Matt's feather, what's pointing you towards trust and forgiveness, and perhaps what accumulated judgments, what heavy stones might you be ready to finally cast aside?